Welcome to the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel, the #1 YouTube channel to help you level up your communication skills. Learn the art of public speaking, social skills, and digital content creation to take your message to the world. For today's episode, I'm going to give you a major insight into something that all charismatic and confident people do. So if stuff like this interests you, then make sure you subscribe right on below for the latest videos regarding how to communicate like a confident winner. Now, what exactly is it that all charismatic and confident people do? I'm going to tell you. But before I tell you, I want to tell you a little story. This was last year when I was thinking about starting a podcast. And I honestly was thinking about starting a podcast because a lot of my friends were telling me to. But at that point, I didn't have much expertise in the whole podcast world. To be quite honest, I wasn't even listening to podcasts like that. But I decided that I was going to give it a try anyways. Well, one day, one of my friends comes up to me and was like, "Yo, Armani, so are you going to practice? Like, what are you going to do?" And to be quite honest, when I heard that question, I was thinking, practice? We talking about practice? Practice for what? You do know that I'm a public speaker, right? I had this very arrogant vibe. I was thinking, as a public speaker, I have to walk around the stage. I have to use hand gestures. I have to make eye contact appropriately. I have to use tonality. And you're asking me if I have to practice by just sitting down and talking in a mic? What could be so hard about that? What could be so hard about that? So needless to say, I entered the entire podcasting journey with a very, very arrogant mindset. And I remember every day I would record a 10 to 15 minute episode about whatever, about communication skills. And I remember recording and listening back to it, just hyping myself up, giving myself a pat on the back, thinking, "Yo, Armani, you are killing it. This podcast is going to light up the entire world." Well, 2 to 3 weeks goes on by, and I remember I run into this friend, and he has his own podcast, and his podcast was doing really, really well at the time. So I thought, you know what? What the hell? How about I ask him to evaluate my podcast and let me know what he thinks? I mean, I already know what he's going to say. He's going to tell me how awesome it is, but let me just see what he thinks. So I asked him if he'd be kind enough to evaluate my podcast. He agrees, and I give him 3 to 4 episodes. He says, give him a few days and he'll get back to me with a critique. Well, a few days passes by and he comes back with the critique. In my mind, I'm thinking, "Yo, Armani, this was the best thing I ever heard. Yo, Armani, teach me your ways. Yo, Armani, you want to do a collab together?" This was all in my mind. But in reality, it was completely different. He completely shredded my podcast. He said my voice was stiff, he said my content didn't sound right, and he said my delivery just didn't feel right. And he couldn't put his finger on it. He just couldn't put his finger on it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what are you talking about? This is an amazing body of work. How are you going to tell me that this isn't good? I'm not telling him this, but this is what I'm thinking. And I took his critique and I said, "Thank you for taking your time to listen to the episodes and give me an evaluation." But my ego was a little hurt. I was pretty hurt and I didn't really take his words seriously. Well, within the first few days, I just completely brushed off everything he was saying. But as those days passed on by and the emotions subsided, my rational thinking started to come to fruition again. And I started to listen to the podcast and started to take his criticism to mind this time. And I kid you not, this time when I was hearing my podcast back, it sounded completely different. It felt as though that criticism that he had given me a completely different perception of my work. But more importantly, it gave me a renewed perspective. My friend was 100% spot on. My delivery was not right. It was very awkward. And at first, I couldn't really tell what the problem was. I had no clue what the problem was. But the more and more I kept on listening to it, And then I started to listen to other podcasts, the ones that sounded good. I started to notice one major distinction. I titled this YouTube video, "The Main Thing That Charismatic and Confident People Have in Common." You want to know what that is? Get ready. They have an individualized approach versus a generalized approach. Now, what does that mean? Well, as I started to listen back to my podcast, I noticed that I was talking like this. It seemed as though I was on stage and I was really just projecting my voice and making it heard in an audience. But the problem with that was that the voice was too general. It seemed as though I was talking to too many people. While in reality, successful podcasters, when you were hearing them, it felt as though they were talking right to you. They were individualizing you. And the more and more I kept listening to them, all these great podcasters had that one thing in common. They would individualize their listener. That's exactly what charismatic and confident people have in common. They know how to individualize people. When you have a general mentality, if you're in a group setting, you see a group. But if you have an individual mentality, you see 5 people standing next to each other that form a group. Now, this may seem just like wordplay to you, but the mindset shift is huge. It is very, very big because when you see the group, you start, first of all, feeling more anxious because it feels as though you're communicating with this large tribe. But your message doesn't feel personalized to that particular person. While on the other hand, if you see 5 different individuals, now you're speaking to one person at a time, and each person feels as though you're giving them your full attention. And this mindset shift was big for me because I started to take it to my public speaking world. Rather than projecting my voice, now I was just having one-on-one conversations with the audience members. The audience members loved me more for it because they felt as though I was entering right into their world. Right after a speech was done, people would come up and say, "Yo, Armani, was it just me or were you looking at me a lot? Or did it feel like you were talking right to me?" And it's funny because 50 plus people would come to me with the same exact concern. Well, not concern, but feedback, which is a good problem to have. So for you to be charismatic and confident, you need to be able to make that mindset shift. It doesn't matter if you're giving a speech, if you're doing a podcast episode, or even if you're writing. Writing is a good way to talk right to one person. Just to one person. There's no reason that you have to have this general approach. You'll notice as you start talking to that one person, you start having your message resonate more with people. If I was talking to you in the camera right now and I kept looking around like this, you'll feel as though you weren't as important. But the fact that I'm looking right into the camera and I'm looking right at you, it feels as though you and I have a personal connection with one another. And if you keep on watching these videos, it's going to feel as though we've known each other for a long, long time. This is something that appeals to your subconscious mind. So from here on out, observe charismatic people, observe confident people. You'll notice that they have this laser-like message to whoever they're speaking to. They could be speaking to 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, but you won't be able to tell because it always seems as though they're focused. Their eye contact is focused. Their voice is focused. Their body language is focused. And this is huge because this allows you to have more perspective every single time that you're talking to someone else. So I want you to give this a try. Give this a try and I guarantee you, you'll notice yourself feeling much more confident and your peers will notice you feeling much more charismatic in the process. Huge key and huge way to increase your social intelligence. Now, if you liked what I covered in today's episode, then you're in luck. Recently, I released the Armani Archives Social Dynamics Edition. Now, the Armani Archives is a compilation of 300 plus pages, including hundreds and hundreds of stories regarding exactly what you should be doing in social interactions, how to be carrying yourself the correct way, proper ways to build a social circle, how to be charismatic, confident, and so much more. These are info that, unfortunately, you were never taught in school. You were never taught how to be socially intelligent growing up. So, the Armani Archives got you. Go on over to the description box and you will find a link to the Armani Archives Social Dynamics Edition. Hit the link and grab your copy today. You won't regret it. With that being said, thank you, my friend, for joining the Armani Talks episode, and I'll catch you next time.